Okay, what can be said about Doctor Who that hasn't been said? Well, probably nothing. But today I'm going to give it a shot.
Welcome to the Cube with Brian D. Anderson.
Now I got to disclose something. I have not been a lifetime Who fan. I am not steeped in its lore. My knowledge is basically limited to modern Doctor Who. Now, I did watch a few episodes when I was young, and I enjoyed it enough. It's just not what I was into at the time. While not the biggest Whovian in the world as far as a depth of knowledge, I am a big fan. I picked it up when it was on Netflix when we were still living in New York, and saw the first season with Christopher Eccleston, and I was just blown away. And by the time I got to the last episode, I just could not believe the level of sophistication that the BBC had put into what was a classic, but gotta admit, a little bit of a cheesy science fiction show. The storytelling was brilliant. The characterization, the way they portrayed the Doctor was captivating. The character of Rose Tyler and her dynamic with Mickey and her mother, I just loved that. It was the whole package. Like many of you, I am a huge fan of the David Tennant rendition of the Doctor. It was amazing the way he portrayed the character. And I mean, Christopher Eccleston did a fine job, and I liked the way he did it. But Tennant took it to a new level, and he made it his own from the very, very beginning, from that very first episode. He just owned the Doctor. He became the Doctor, and I mean, yeah. Rose left Mickey for the Doctor, but who can blame her? I'm sorry, it's David Tennant's Doctor. There's no contest there. I mean, the storytelling, it just got better and better. It brought you the Weeping Angels. You get introduced to River Song, who to me is one of the best characters in all of Who history, at least the history that I know of. It was just an amazing show, and each season with Tennant got better and better. And then we get to see the Master and all these the way they brought back the Daleks, the way they brought back the Cybermen, all these old favorites, and then they sort of mixed it in with these new characters and new plot lines, and the whole season would be one continual story thread, even though you didn't necessarily have to watch the episodes in order to sort of enjoy the individual episodes. It was just brilliant, everything about it. I turned several people onto Doctor Who had never enjoyed sci-fi. I mean, these people didn't like Battlestar Galactica, and what insane person doesn't like Battlestar Galactica? And but they latched on to Who. It was a show for everybody. And then, I know he didn't want to go, but Tennant left us. The Matt Smith era was not something I was excited to see. I was still mourning the loss of David Tennant. I did not want to give Matt Smith a chance, but he won me over. Now, David Tennant is still my favorite Doctor, and he always will be as far as I'm concerned. But Matt Smith made it his own. I mean, he has an undeniable talent. You know, I mean, he is not David Tennant. He is not Christopher Eccleston. He is Matt Smith, and he made sure that the audience knew that he was not like his predecessors. I don't know, it took a little while to warm up to him because he was a little goofier, he was a little quirkier, but he had a range. His acting was not one dimensional. He had a broad range, and he sort of knew the direction he wanted to take the character, and he was aided by some fantastic writing. And that was the thing about the Doctor. Throughout, the writing was consistent. It was more than consistent. It was continuing to get better. Just more layered. They didn't dismiss canon. They took the past and integrated it into the present and projected it into the future. It was brilliant. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. It's brilliant. And then you have new companions. You have Amy and Rory's by far my favorite companion for one reason. He was the only companion who didn't completely buy into the Doctor. He was skeptical, downright suspicious, actually. If you remember the episode Vampires of Venice, I believe it was, where he told the Doctor flat out that you're dangerous. You make people do things that could get them killed. You know, they're doing it to impress you. And he never had the kind of, you know, undying faith that the other companions had in the Doctor. And I was always impressed by that. I was always impressed how the writers kind of, I don't know if it was deliberate, instinctual, or what, but it was exactly what the show needed, that kind of companion. And the way they introduced companions was brilliant, because they would bring one on, just like they did in with Mickey and Rose. They brought Rose on. They sort of introduced Mickey, and then later on we get Jack Harkness. You know, they give you time to get to know one character before they throw another one at you, and that was just good storytelling, great writing, even the music. You know, each character had their own, almost like theme music, it seemed like. The villains certainly did. When the Daleks came on, the music that came on in the background was absolutely, unmistakably Dalek music, that operatic sort of, you know, I guess it kind of reminds me of an intro to an Ozzy Osbourne song. But it just, the show was continuing to get better and better and better and better and better. And then they had River Song, made her an important part of the show, and she's one of my favorite characters. Next to Ripley from Aliens, my favorite female protagonist. I mean, she's badass, she's tough, she's strong-willed, but yet she's tender, and she has a depth of emotion, and it was the acting, certainly, but it was also the way it was written. You have to have both. I mean, no matter how great the actor is, if they don't have the writing to support them, it's gonna be half a performance. And the way River Song was portrayed was absolutely brilliant. I loved her character. I hated that I knew how she was gonna die, and. But at the same time, you're always looking for that, because you know from the Tennant era what's going to eventually happen to her. And man, they were still able to write her in. It was amazing. And I got to say, I really enjoy the Matt Smith era for all those reasons and more. And, you know, I'm looking back, God, do I ever miss him, because as with all things, nothing can last forever. Peter Capaldi is a fine actor. No doubt about it. But they wrote his character, they turned the Doctor into a humorless asshole that first season with Capaldi. They were trying to go for, I think, aloof, detached, and they made him a jackass. They turned him into a prick, and you're like, what? The Doctor was never, even though the Doctor could have a temper, and he was never an asshole. But eventually it did improve, and I remember for the first time when he took over the role, after about the third or fourth episode, I remember not being as excited to see a new episode coming on that week, and I remember skipping weeks and not watching it and going, I'll catch it later. And of course, at the time you could still watch it on like Amazon Prime. I forget where you could catch them later on, so it wasn't that big a deal. But like I said, I just couldn't get excited about it. Now, later, it does sort of, get its legs back underneath it, and you start seeing the stories get better, and they kind of pull back from him being a jackass and soften him up a little bit, make him more caring. Clara Oswald, I didn't have strong negative feelings about Clara. I think she was okay. She was, to me, a mediocre companion. I loved Bill Potts, though. God, Bill Potts, to me, sort of saved the Capaldi era. She was a great counterpoint to the Doctor and did a fantastic job with the part of the companion. And then Missy comes in, and which was a great twist. You have Missy's a woman. I didn't see that coming, and the acting and writing for that was spot on. It was new. It gave depth to the lore. I thought it was incredible, and the way the redemption arc that they put the Master on was brilliant. So the ending of the Capaldi era, to me, far outshines the beginning of it. And I don't know, but I did feel sort of a decline in my own interest because of the way it started. But I was hoping that it would increase as the show continued to get better. Then the announcement was made that Capaldi was leaving, and I was okay. Well, it was, all right, we'll see who they pick next. And then I hear they're going to make the Doctor a woman for the first time. Now, I know a lot of people just did not like this idea. I personally thought it could be a great thing. The way they did it with Missy, the way they did, when they made the Master into a female, they did it very well, and I thought, man, this could really be a good thing. It wasn't. What they did, in my mind, killed Doctor Who. Jodie Whittaker. I can't say much about her acting. Now, I don't know who she is as a person. She may be the sweetest person to ever walk the face of the earth. But I do not have a lot to say positively about her acting ability. Of course, they could have put Dame Judi Dench in there, and it wouldn't have mattered. The writing was worse than the acting. Just the layers and layers and layers of mistakes, wrong turns, and bad decisions. I could go on for an hour and a half and I would still be able to think of more. But we'll start with the most obvious, which would be the political messaging that they decided to include. They were going to, I guess, I hate using this term, but they were going to get woke. And problem is, Doctor Who fans in general weren't a bunch of jackbooted goose steppers. They were a pretty liberal bunch to begin with. But they don't like being preached to. And you're taking a show that has been for a general audience, that has been a show for everybody, and turned it into an echo chamber. because you're not going to change minds with the type of storytelling that they're doing. It's the political messaging is ham-fisted, shoehorned in, and obvious. Doctor Who has taken moral stances before, but it was wrapped in a clever narrative. It was subtle. There was nothing subtle about this. And then there's the companions. They throw 3 companions all in at once. Now, why would they do that? Why not start out with one companion, let us get to know that companion, then bring in another companion, or, that's what they had always done in the past. But they throw 3 companions in all at once on top of a brand new Doctor who we don't know yet. Using writers that had no experience with science fiction broadly and no experience with Doctor Who specifically. It was a train wreck. Then you have the way they turn the Doctor into a female. You have the most curious being in the universe who's over 2,000 years old and has been male that entire time, suddenly becomes female, seemingly completely incurious about this pretty dramatic change. I mean, gets a new outfit, moves on. I've been a man for 48 years. If tomorrow I woke up and I was a woman, after the initial shock wore off, I would be curious of what that meant for my life. What changes would I undergo? What benefits? What challenges? What kind of woman would I be? I would be, and I've only been a man for 48 years. The Doctor has been a man for over 2,000. I kept on thinking right from the beginning that they were going to do something about that they were going to maybe send the Doctor back to the restaurant with Capaldi and River Song, sneak off with River to kind of show her the girl ropes, I thought that would have been a brilliant way to do that, and it could have paid a little bit of homage to the past Doctor and the past era, while deepening the current character, the current rendition that Jodie Whittaker was failing to flesh out. And I was like, and I kept wondering, why aren't they doing that? Why aren't they exploring womanhood with the first female Doctor? Why is this just no big deal? But as the show went on, I realized why. They wanted it to not matter. They wanted it to be this group of homogeneous, asexual beings that, that gender didn't matter. And that in itself is a political message. But there's not anybody, I don't care how far to the left you may be, that if you woke up with different genitalia, that you wouldn't have some questions. It wouldn't, that exploration of your new life wouldn't be paramount. If I became a woman, I would want to try to find out, what kind of woman am I going to be? But this was not the case. And as time went on and viewership dropped off, they continued to double down. They continued to try to justify this. See, one thing I've noticed is that whether it's people on the far left or the far right or any kind of extremist view, they just want something changed. They don't support it. And that goes for any extremist view. They just don't want you to have what you have. They want you to have what they want you to have. They don't have to have enjoyed it themselves. And that was part of, if not all of, the pushback that the BBC has been and is still getting. Then they go into screwing with canon and changing the entire history of Doctor Who. Oh my God. Doctor Who didn't need an origin story. Doctor Who, it's in the name, Doctor Who. The fact that Who's origin was vague, didn't even know the Doctor's name, let alone where the Doctor came from. Yeah. I don't get why they wanted to do this. I don't get why they wanted to do this to this show that has such history and such a loyal fan base. And maybe that was it. Maybe they were counting on the loyalty of the fans to keep them coming back. But nobody's that loyal. Nobody likes being preached to. The Doctor wasn't a liberal or a conservative. The Doctor was the Doctor. The Doctor's views were colored by experience. And they've ruined it. They've ruined it for me. They've ruined it for millions of fans like me. I mean, like I said, I really genuinely remember being excited that there would be a female Doctor and almost crushed at the way they did it and what they decided to do and what they are continuing to do. So, if you disagree, that's your prerogative. If you think that this new era is exactly what Who needed, you're not alone. There are a lot of people who think that too. But for me, I don't like politics in my entertainment. Not to that degree, at least. I enjoy narratives, not propaganda. There's a difference. I've written propaganda. I have written in favor of marriage equality many times. I do not steel man the other side of that debate. I do not try to make you understand how the other side thinks and feels about it. I think it's an absolute right that you should be able to marry whoever you want, regardless of your sexual orientation. That we have no business being the love police. And I stamp my name on it, and I'm willing to say it publicly as Brian D. Anderson, me, writing this about a subject I feel strongly about. But when I write a book or a short story or anything like that, or some sort of narrative, I don't do that because that's not what I'm supposed to do as an author. In my recent book, The Bard's Blade, I take a big swipe at fundamentalism. I'm anti-fundamentalism. But I do not dehumanize the fundamentalists. I do not make them into that parody character that they did with the, I don't even remember the episode. I mean, I used to know the names of the episodes, but I don't even care anymore. I don't dehumanize them, mainly because I want the reader to decide for themselves how to feel about it. This is not what they do. They give you no option but to feel one way. That's an echo chamber. That's not a show. The only people who would enjoy that are people who already agree. And from what I'm seeing, that's where the show is, and that's where the show is going to stay. Anyway, that's my take on Doctor Who. Like and subscribe. If you disagree, tell me about it. Just be respectful. I'll be respectful back. And we'll see you next time, right here on The Q.